Hey, good morning. No, Mojo. Um, Doing reorg at work. I'm sorry to hear that, Doctor. Hopefully that doesn't cause you any issues. My camera today is not working at all. It will not turn on today. That'd be a great start to a weekend. They bought your computer, you're probably safe. Oh, I would believe that's a good sign as well. So, okay, well, we now have no camera. It's not funny. Not exactly the biggest fan of having a camera all the time, but still, it does help the stream. It's crazy how the numbers change just by having cameras. Lazy Fox, welcome in. Thank you for the follow. Sally. How you doing? I'm just trying to give the camera a chance. See if it'll come on. It, it looks like it actually knows there's a camera there, but it's got no display. So I'll have to pull it apart over the weekend and see what happens. Hopefully the camera hasn't died. That would be really bad. I'm not replacing a $700 camera. we'll be on terrible webcams. Okay, but it's definitely not working. So I'll have to restart the machine. So anyway, let's get on with some stuff. Frank, good morning. Okay. I was watching the highly technical talk on channels. Not sure where producer consumers use, but I had a teacher try to teach me the concept. Oh, I remember this unreadable code my professor gave me. DSLR, body the chip. It's a Lumix G7. So I know they're a lot cheaper these days. I can probably pick one up, but let's hope I don't have to. Yeah. So let's get on with some code. We have this challenge from yesterday. I actually did some additional searching around yesterday. I actually also decided to try and use the agent in DataGrip to see if it would help me with the problem, and copied the answer out. So basically, what the problem is for those that are have not seen this yet, I am introducing the concept of a well, we have the concept of a sprint in the application, right? So we have the concept of a sprint. This is the current sprint for Liquid Sky. And what I want to do is associate a team with that sprint, right? So that when you go to look at the work you need to look at, this will now show team. You'll only see work for teams you are actually associated with. If you're associated to one team, you're associated to one team. But you'll see the work you are able to see. So minor reorg, there you go. So associating the team with the sprint is a challenge because I cannot create a sprint without assigning to a team. So one of the things I want to make sure of is that you have to have um, a team when you start a sprint. Right? You can't have a just general out there sprint. It has to be associated with a team. That helps organize the work. That helps people see what they should see. Have a good day, Mojo. Take care. But with this requirement comes a challenge. With this requirement comes I have to introduce a non-nullable field on a table. So I did copy the agent session content down, and here's what it said when I asked it about, okay, I need to introduce this concept. You must add a non-nullable unique team identifier to column to sprints, but do not have a team identifier. Create a placeholder. You have two options. You have two options. Create a placeholder team and assign all existing sprints to this team. This preserves the data integrity and allows you to enforce not-null and unique constraints. If I don't know where it got unique from. I never said it should be a unique team identifier. If you want to force assignment later, you can add the column as nullable, deploy the change, update your application to require team identifier for new sprints, manually assign teams to old sprints. Once all rows have a value, alter the column to be not null and unique. The first option is usually preferred for data integrity and simpler migrations. The second option is more flexible but requires careful coordination and two-step migration. So this is exactly what we talked about yesterday, right? This is how I said it yesterday. We have two options. Make it non-nullable and create a dummy placeholder team, or create it as nullable, populate it once we can, and then once we've introduced teams, and then come back later at some unspecified date and make it not null. And again, it decided that it should be unique. It shouldn't be unique. You should not have a unique sprint ID per team ID per sprint. So I'm interested in thoughts. What would you do? What would, if you came up against this problem or have come up against this problem, what actions have you taken, and did you like the actions you took? Would you do it differently? Genuinely interested in that. That thought. What's the association between teams, users, sprints, planning? So a sprint. Okay, let me start application up. There's no hierarchy necessarily. It's an association. Teams do have users. A team, a sprint has a team. Planning has no bearing on this whatsoever at this point. Still trying to figure out whether that's a useful association at all. Did I change something in here? And no, mess something up. No. Okay. Can you plan a cross product item with team and sprints? Yes. Yes, because the product is. So if we go here, team, Alpha Delta Quantum, users, go to Jeffrey. Jeffrey is assigned to Alpha and Quantum teams, right? Invariably, a person, a user, a normal developer is going to be assigned to one team, right? Not multiple teams. Product teams, QA teams, DevOps may be associated with multiple teams so they can see work and do what they need to do. But the idea would be that you can be in one or many teams. When we go to tasks over here, the associated team is shown now. The idea again would be that this would only return for that user the work for teams that that user is associated with. Well, the teams aren't, the teams as I'm seeing them here aren't aligned to QA development, etc. The teams are teams. A QA member could be on your team, right? And I'm still not sure that there's not some further grouping available to highlight task functionality. But either way, so when we create a sprint, what I want to do is make it that a team is associated to us. A sprint is for a team, right? We don't start one sprint and have many teams. Jira does this in a very strange way these days. And actually, this is closer to Jira's current function than it is to the one I've used before, in terms of the entire workload is there and you get visibility into what you get visibility into. But these sprints are still per team. That's an interesting drag and drop. So I'm that's a bad relationship for a product manager, because now everything's a demand, not a request. Yeah, joy. So yeah, the idea would be that when a sprint is created for a team. The backlog overall, if I go in here and I can see every single team because I'm an administrator and I have, provided access to every single team, then I can see all this work at a glance, and filter by teams. However, when it comes to the team, this would be, team one testing sprint flow, or team, because then you could have a QA team, you could have QA members inside the team. There's all sorts of organizational stuff there. But basically, associating a team with a sprint is a necessity, as I see it. But I would be interested in others' experience and opinions. No worries. No worries. I get it all. Sorry, I'm also trying to see if I can get the camera up and working because now it's bugging me. But apparently not. You take one day off using the camera and the stream doesn't work properly anymore. But ultimately, what I've got to do here is I've got to come up with a compromise, right? I've got to come up with what is the solution that works for me, right? This team identifier right now is a non-nullable GUID. if I bring up the database table, if I introduce team identifier onto this object, right? If I go new column and we call this team identifier, to be honest, I'd probably write out use cases in terms of BDD tests. Huh? Well, what would that give me? I understand the usage of what I'm trying to do. I'm not sure. As a product owner, I can plan out cross-team initiatives. Cross-team initiatives are supported by, I go in here, I create an initiative, right? Super cross-team, right? I save that. I go in here, I say, okay, this AI prompt planning item, this is going to be on the super cross-team initiative. He says, as he doesn't have access to it because it's not refreshed yet. Maybe, hello, how you doing? Yeah, lucky it isn't because my camera's now not working today. Apparently giving it a day off. It was a bad idea. But either way, okay, apart from refresh not working there, I can assign many planning items to initiatives. I can task this out, and these tasks, when I add them, are assigned to a team. So by design, this supports cross-team. Camera is syndicated. Yeah, it's I rebooted it. Actually, it's like well, the team info's not displaying yet. I haven't got to that part yet, but you can assign a task to a team. Oh, that was more promising. It's not a black box right this second. Oh. Oh, oh well. Look, well, you murder chicken. That's okay. Yeah. So the idea is one of these tasks are not. If one's for QA, if one's for product, even if one's for product management can technically have our own backlog of tasks. DevOps, etc. These tasks are to meet this requirement, not to put this requirement onto the team. So it kind of flips it that way, right? So when we go into the task area, this is where, as a developer, where's my teams gone? As a developer, I see the sprint that I'm currently associated with. This drop down would only offer sprints that I'm allowed to see. So if I was in two teams, even as a developer, I could still see both teams' boards. I think the team feature should answer the question who is in the scrum. And it does. Does it not answer that question by this? Right. Orgs do have different structures, which is exactly why I'm pivoting this in the way I am doing, because the work may not rest on one team, but if you have that work split up across multiple associated stories in Jira, how do you organize that? Now, I'm not saying it's not possible to do any of this in Jira. It is totally possible. It requires good administration. All I'm doing is splitting the two pieces. Um, you can divide it by mobile server. However you build a team out doesn't really make a difference. Um, I've typically worked in, um, yeah, organizations with, many dev teams, shared DevOps, shared DBAs. DBAs are a team of their own. DevOps is a team of their own. Um, um, Integration and data migrations is teams of their own, right? Then some teams, everything's done within the same team. So either way, a sprint, a 2 week or 3 week, or however much time you allocate, is assigned to a team. If I exist on multiple teams, I will see both sprints. I will be able to contribute and see both teams. But a sprint is a sole focus for one team. Um, Now, again, don't forget the goal of this is that ultimately, from a stand up perspective, um, the product management team goes and says, okay, I want to be told when this requirement moves, right? When changes happen on this requirement, they would get alerts regardless of which team, or they get a summary for a daily, like, oh, this task for this planning item and this requirement moved today. There's a new comment added on one of the tasks. There's all sorts of stuff that they can give insights to, regardless of team. The reason I said a team maps to the Scrum is me trying to get my head around what is team definition, not whether the software coming. Yep. Okay. I appreciate it. Um, but I mean, that's kind of a common alignment, though, right? Um, that's why we have the Scrum of Scrums concept, which is where all the Scrum teams are aligning. I think it has implications in how things are laid out. Um, in this case, I'm not. Well, in my particular challenge right now, and the conversation is obviously allowing me to address by talking about this, by thinking this through, is allowing me to kind of reaffirm um why I'm putting team on sprint. I don't see that it's I really want to show a couple of examples. Like org has product A and product B. Okay. I've really got to remember to keep talking as well because what's a good example of two adjacent products? Well, good examples. You mean like linked but not linked, or it's driving me crazy that I can't get this to work, so I'm just giving it another try. No, I can't. I can't reach the right parts there. I think I've unplugged the device somehow. There's two products: experiences and one night stays, an Airbnb. Okay. You want a feature that spans both, and what does that look like? Um, I think. Well, I think at this point you probably know what that looks like in terms of liquid sky. Um, where do the requirements drive from? Right. um, hello, how are you doing? No, it is not Friday here. I am deliberately trolling to see who's paying attention to the notifications. Um, I found it amusing the other day when I left the Saturday streaming, and Chris Jones mentioned noticed. Um, I often do try and put different messages in there every day. I was just trying to see who pays attention to notifications. No, you're not. At least two. So say the org is structured so there are two product owners for each section. Okay. They come up with this idea and they need to assign it to engineers, right? You tell me when you want me to address anything or answer anything, because I got to figure out how to keep talking while no camera. So um, I don't want to rush ahead of you again because again, I guess you make a planning item with four tasks and assign it to a team and get into development. Yeah. Well, if you had two products on, if you had a product owner for each platform, but you had a cross product concern, you'd what would the requirements look like? Who would own the requirements, right? If it's one team's responsible for making sure that they can log into product A and touch product B, then it's just a case of collaborative planning from the product team, right? Don't forget an initiative as well. The intention of an initiative in the near to long term is that an initiative will have collaboration. So an initiative will have a lead and collaborators. So if in that case, if that initiative was to kind of join the two products, they'd be both linked by an initiative, and you will be able to still see planning items by initiative, right? So even if they were, yeah, the aim would not be to show. Um, it might default to filtering who is the current product owner, in this, but this is not intended to be hiding stuff. Well, it wouldn't be clear which engineer gets the tickets either, right? If it's shared service, you like have two choices, right? But that would come down to the planning, right? So if I go in here and I have a requirement, that requirement, we have tasks. And the team that gets it is the team where it matters the most. But it still would be flexible. It wouldn't be clear which engineer gets the tickets either, right? If it's a shared service, you'd likely have two choices. Yeah, but you'd assign that at that point. Like when you're tasking it out, the team that's tasking it out is the one that's going to be doing the work anyway, so it'd be assigned to them. Yeah. But if the other team, if the stays team had capacity, no, I won't make a third team for that. And if you had an engineer that could float, you would just say, okay, put them on two teams, associate them with both teams so they can see both boards. Right, it's a visibility thing, not a. And that's one of the problems I think I have with the tooling we have available is we spend a lot of time trying to mimic our organizational structure inside of the tooling and try and mimic our processes and then make new processes to attach to the product. What I'm trying to do is just make sure it's visible to the people you want it to be visible to. It's traceable, and yeah. And don't forget, in here, that planning item, when you associate it, those might be projects, not teams. You might have many teams on a given project, so you might have assigned projects here, which allows you to filter it. What if the scheduling feature initially has all shared features, but then has differences individually? I guess you do the opposite. You develop the same features on two different platforms and then figure out what is shared and bring them together. Yeah. The planning items do not align to the product. Individual components of the product. They align to the product as a whole and can be associated with elements of the product is a concept there, so that the tasking, the development teams, again, you could go in here and nothing says you have to create all the tasks for one team. This can be for any number of teams. Well, yeah, in this case, like projects, right? So this is how it's being used right this second, right? This is the real one. Client and control tower, right? So if there's a concern that crosses both, right, deactivate subscription, it has both represented because marked subscription is inactive. This is elements that get done in the control tower side. This is stuff that gets done in the Liquid Sky side, in the client side. This is a cross product or cross team concern, essentially. Because this is what I see from one side, this is what I see from the other. Is there a roadmap of each product? I mean, that would be a combination of the initiatives plus the planning items, right? To show what's out there currently and what sort of timelines you're looking at. Yeah, filters. Right now, it filters by initiative assigned to and status, but doesn't say you can't have further filters in there. Show me that all that associate this product, but also from this side, you'll be able to go in and see the planning items associated as well. Don't forget, I also want to show a Kanban board here. right? So the Kanban board will combine where everything is for that planning item. And the same at initiative level, it will combine everything that is there from a product team perspective, so it knows where everything is at this point. So that is one of the intentions of the initiative, is to click on the initiative and see the boards, like what's currently in planning, what's currently in progress, what's currently in development. Right. I guess one of the issues with developers is it just supplies a bucket of 100 open issues. But again, this side of the thing, this side of the house, yeah, is this is only work to be done. This is work the team has, the development teams have agreed to, right? This side of the house is everything, like what is dreamt up, what is in progress. That's why the review date is intended to, and again, alerting will come around on that, bring that back into view at the right time. That's the intention, so that it will organize by nearest first, and then allow you to kind of prioritize your thoughts. So if this doesn't need to be talked about for another couple of months, you could put a review date 3 months out in the future. But it's still there as a placeholder to add comments and whatever and meetings on. These are mostly in terms of features, right? What about enhancements and bugs? Enhancements and bugs, well, enhancements still is planning. That requires planning. Bugs, right now the intention would be to provide, I removed a button from this, which was to create a task. But the intention will be to put that button back for now. But there is a plan of putting in a ticketing component. So ticketing will be the third section here. If you have a QA department that just generates enhancements and bugs, well, QA should not be generating enhancements. QA should never be determining, oh, this could be better, this could be cleaner, right? That's still a product concern. But if there is a bug found as part of a story that is too big, then yeah, a bug needs to be tracked, and that is a task that will be created. Jake, hello, how are you doing? Very nice to go with Angular. Do you have any resources to learn Angular? Cesar, hello, how are you doing? Welcome in, and thank you for the follow. Do I have any resources? I do not have any resources for learning Angular at this point. I have been doing Angular for router link. Oh, that's the. I've been doing Angular now for about 8 or 9 years. The Angular team have produced quite a lot of good content. 1 second, let me just clean that up. That bugs me. Let me there's I'm just trying to see if I can find there's a group that does. See, Angular has changed so much. If you go to Angular, there you go. This if you find tutorials from 2 years ago on Angular, they're going to be out of date because of 16, 17, 18, and 19 having launched, which have, more signal code, and there's a lot of different patterns in there now. The documentation is probably the best. There was a podcast. I think it's Angular Air. I think it's actually yeah. Because they kind of keep up with the things. They keep up with I learned JS through videos. I must admit that I tried JS with JS documentation. I knew the basics, but not how to create a project. Well, I would honestly say I don't know how to effectively create a project yet. Um, if you watch my content and you see my Angular project, it's very much um, evolving as I get a feel for how I want things to look and how I think they should be organized. Um, Angular previously used modules. With Angular 19, they introduced standalone as a default. So now I have the features and it changed the design quite substantially. Um, this podcast, I've I've picked up some good resources from. They're very good. And there's a lot of content there from several years. I believe there's actually Angular developers on there. Apex, good morning. Hope you are well. Like the correction to hello and then the correction to Apex. um, but yeah, Angular Air is one of the better ones. Um, so for anyone new to the stream, this is Project Liquid Sky. This is a project management and planning application I've been building for quite a while now. This is the actual version. I'm using this to plan this. Right now, I'm focused on assigning teams to sprints, which is kind of the discussion I'm having today. Basically, going through the use cases presented. Take care, Frank. Have a great day. Thank you for coming and hanging out. I appreciate you. And if you don't know, if you like .NET content, Frank does stream on Fridays recently. He's been building a dice game. He builds different products. And very knowledgeable developer with a lot of different a lot of varied skills compared to what I'm doing. A lot of cloud knowledge, a lot of experience there is on show on his stream. And it's also a really great stream to go hang out in. Thank you for the follow. You use WebStorm? Yes. I have a JetBrains subscription, so this is Rider, this is WebStorm, this is DataGrip. So I'm using this all around. No worries, Frank. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out. I appreciate you. And yeah. Stream is going well overall. My camera's not working. It is broken. So that is why no camera today. What I'm discussing, or what I've been discussing this morning, there's a lot more discussion because this is an important step. Team identifier. So the idea is that when you create a sprint, you will associate a team to that sprint, right? A sprint cannot be created without a team associated to it. It is, the focus. However, introducing that field is not just a simple case of adding a column to a table. I want to say you cannot have a sprint without a team. So this would look like this. I don't know why their type ahead stuff does not work well in this tool. But if I do this, it will error. It will error because it can't be null. And there's existing data in there, right? Now, I can wipe everything out. I could hack this and make it work. However, that's not useful. and this is I'm using this one. Oh, his daughter. Thank you for the chat. Appreciate it. I appreciate going through this as always. Early, good afternoon. Hope you are well. I'm using this as a thought exercise, right? I know what I can do. I know that I can get this fixed relatively quickly, being that the data that's associated with it, there's nothing important, right? There's only my stuff. And I've been reviewing, if people are using the product, there's only my stuff that's really going to be affected. But that's not the attitude I want to take. I want to practice this process. I want to practice this design opportunity, and I want to make sure that I'm treating it as real as possible. Because if I release this product next month or the month after or whatever, the moment people actually start using it and potentially start paying for it, I have a different responsibility to that data. So it's not just a quick case of, oh, just make it not null, or I'll make it nullable, right? Right. Sorry, that's not null, explicit. It won't let me do this because, there's data. If I do that, it's fine because it can be null, but I don't want it to be null. Right? So I have a requirement that says I have to select a team when I create a sprint. So I go through yesterday and I'm like, okay, well, to me, without using any tooling, my options are I make it not null and I assign it to a default empty team, right? Which doesn't exist in this context. And again, I don't have any knowledge of the teams because the teams exist outside of this component, right? Design issue. Teams, for reference, anyone who hasn't seen this before, teams live teams live in organization management. They're an organizational concern, not a concern of tasking. All I do is when I assign a sprint is I assign a GUID to it, which is a team identifier. So I can assign any GUID I want to this, and it doesn't matter as long as I match the same GUID over here. I can't force people to have a team. What do I do? So to me, I can make it not null the way I want it to be. I can default the GUID and create a dummy team, which would allow me to then populate all the data, have it associated with the dummy team. But then what does that mean? If someone now signs up for the software, well, someone is using the software and comes along, now they've got this dummy team appear. Do they rename the team? Do they do they create a new team? Do we introduce the ability to reassign a sprint to a different team, which makes no sense whatsoever? You might as well just delete the sprint. What do we do? So I asked our favorite tools, the AI. I asked what are my options, and it was basically create a dummy team or make it not null, make it nullable for now, and then at a point in future come along and make it not null. Right. If a sprint belongs to a team and you want to allow someone to not have to create a team, can't you have a default team and just not show the team name if it is the default team name? Yes. Yeah. Where I'm heading there is basically by having this requirement, I have a further feature that I need to allow for, right? Or if I either incur some technical debt in terms of I make it nullable right now so that all the data that exists is fine. However, breaking everything else because now the sprints will disappear. And I don't want to introduce the ability to edit a team, edit a sprint to assign it to a team because that's not a feature that I want. So I'm trying to weigh up what my options are in terms of the future path, and realize that this is the sort of thing you think through from a planning perspective. And I'm treating this as if there's real data out there, right? I mean, there is real data in that this is my actual data, right? I'm using the product to plan the product. So once I put this feature into place, this will matter, right? These teams will not exist. There will be no teams in the tooling when I launch this next set of changes and run the migrations. So what do? It's it's challenging. Um, because it does introduce a feature no matter which direction I head. And I'm leaning towards the default theme. That was my leaning from yesterday, because I think it's the one that doesn't involve drastic change later. Basically, there's a concept of a team that does not have um, um, a sprint that does not have an associated team, or there is an empty team. So luckily, that's represented um, in .NET. Like this. It's probably a better way of doing this one. Um, oh, I think it just does that, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So we can represent an empty GUID. So we can do it that way. It's probably the better way. The default it to empty. So default is empty. So you can't not have a GUID, but you can have an empty GUID. At least it enforces the not null. But again, this does create a documentation challenge for the future, because this has to be represented. And this is not the first time. This is the first time this has happened for this product, where a requirement that I have directly conflicts with the data that is available to me right now. However, it won't be the last time. This happens all the time. And I fear that most developers would have gone the nullable GUID, which is a bigger lie to me in the code, because it tells a different story. So what I started with the stream was introducing this and basically asking, do you as developers, how would you go at this? What would you do? What have you done? Um, yeah, see, that works now, right? Change the script without that. But this, this happens. This happens all the time. Data migration, um, data field changes, etc., do need to be allowed for. And a simple, oh, just do this, is not something you want to do. You want to really think through the consequences of doing that, because you might have knock-on actions you don't want to react to them. You want to think through what the cost of that is. So to me right now, the cost of this is I have to now introduce this concept of I will show you teams you're associated with or default teams. Right. So there's a rule now in the code. There's code that appears, or I have to figure out, okay, well, when you create your first team, migrate all existing sprints, all existing sprints, all existing data to that team, which now I have to add extra features in for. I have to leave that in there. But that's a one-time thing, so it's costly to do it that way. But I've now introduced a new feature requirement, a new rule in the software that is not necessarily obvious and just needs to be understood. But you got to think through those paths. Similarly, allowing it to be null and then having all the code say it can't be null would leave a lie or a question somewhere, and someone could read the table and say, oh, well, it can be null, so I'll just make it this nullable. And they could misinterpret what that means. So yeah, it is worth thinking through. It is worth understanding the cost of, and not just rushing through and building something knee jerk, because you could pass on extra cost. Features could be developed reactively to that simple act that didn't need to be there. Consistency. So it is not nullable. It can be empty, right? So we go back over to this, go to our tasking. Include team. So include team identifier and sprint entity. Create alter script for sprint to include team identifier. Done. Assign sprint to a team. Afternoon, Mr. Faceless Streamer. Mr. Jones, hello. Since yesterday, my camera has broken. Since it must have been at its nose flat out of place by me not using it yesterday, and it's decided that it will not turn on today. So we'll see how that goes. After stream, I'll pull the equipment out and see what happens. No, I didn't think to do that. A revolutionary thought. I should get on that straight away. We'll see. We shall see. Okay. So proceeding down this path. Obviously, now I've got to keep in mind that I now have an empty team concept, an unassigned team concept. Maybe that comes into play later. Maybe that doesn't. I don't know. But we'll tackle that when we get to it. So our sprint configuration gets team identifier. Our sprint gets team identifier. Introduce team identifier to sprint entity in tasking. We proceed to now introduce the concept of the team identifier from the API down into the application code to capture that and then publish that information out. So again, if you are new to the stream, if you have questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, I say this all the time, so I apologize that a lot of you hear this a lot, but it is really important to me to make sure that I share that the stream is not necessarily about me making progress on the code. Yes, it's nice to do the code. If you do have questions, I know that some people just sit there with me on as background noise. I fully respect that and appreciate it. But if you do have questions, if you have thoughts or opinions on what I'm doing, if you want to dig deeper into why I'm doing something, it is perfectly fine to ask questions. It's perfectly fine to discuss or debate the whys and hows of what I'm doing. I like collaboration. I like conversation around development. So it is part of why I stream. When you're working on your own, you work in a bit of an echo chamber. Every decision is right because you made it. So, hi Seldom, how you doing? Have you tried managing .NET within NX? No, not sure what that would look like. NX is I think I actually installed an extension somewhere. NX console. I haven't quite understood what NX actually is yet. I've heard it mentioned several times, and who was it? Exocamil. Um, he was looking at NX the other day. This implicit dependency management is difficult. What exactly is NX? NX.dev. Open source build system provides tools and techniques for enhancing developer productivity. NX can support .NET. Runs tasks in parallel and orders a task based on it's a manager law. You can define like project workflows. Okay. I see it there. What does that look like? Hmm. Sorry, Seldom, it's not going to allow you to link. I have 2 years ago. I have pretty strict restrictions on the stream due to heavy bot abuse over the last couple of years. Okay, so this hasn't been touched in 2 years, but I assume it's just a set of tools. So it's just another technology that could potentially help, but I'd have to go and dig into to understand what it means to do it. So this is just an example. Yeah. Smart mono reports, fast CI. Gotcha. I have I've not dug into that before. I obviously have heard about it and installed the plugin in response to it, but I've not really dug into what it is. Um, Again, once you get into any form of development, it's just there's so many different directions you can head in and so many different tools. And I'm a big fan of picking appropriate tools. It's helpful in monorepos that have different commands per internal package. Gotcha. I do not have monorepos. The heart of Liquid Sky is mono, but there's other pieces. Okay. What are we doing? So now we turn to including the sprint, the team on the sprint identifier. So we start the API, endpoints, sprint, post. Do I actually allow an edit of sprint? Well, as I select the status, I do not allow to change the information. So public GUID team identifier. Tests are on this piece when creating a sprint. Again, team identifier right now cannot be null. And because I've just introduced this concept of empty, I now have to support an empty GUID. It's not the responsibility of this area of the system to validate the actual sprint, the team. Tasks does not know about teams other than its associated entity by GUID of task and now sprint. But there's no validation here to say, oh, does this team exist? Does it assumes that you're giving it a team that does exist. If that is incorrect, the data will be invalid on the other side. So it is perfectly fine. The joy of tasks. Task is going to be always difficult, but it is represented as a task in the UI right now. So that is the way it is. It does mean that I have to create aliases. If I mean threading task, I refer to it as system task. So I can remain, my domain can remain intact here. It's a challenge. But this happens all the time. You end up with your domain language conflicting with technology, right? If you're in education, class is going to be challenging. If you're in other verticals, other terminology can be confusing. Doesn't always happen that way, but I still happen to have landed on that again. So your system task for disambiguation. Sorry, I realize that I have no camera on. I need to talk more. So when I'm thinking this is going to be particularly difficult, I'm just trying to think what I want to test here. When creating a sprint, it's pretty simple. Private read only GUID team identifier equals GUID.new GUID. Sprint and s.team identifier equals that. Right. And again, moving these things around the second. Trying to clean things up and make them more consistent. I've had a lot of warnings and errors appear for my naming conventions being off, so changing them. This is subject, not handler. This is the system under test. This is the subject, right? My handler is the one that made changes recently to my underlying pieces to allow me to do asynchronous stuff more freely. This introduces iasync lifetime on the testing, so I can do awaits properly. So I can even do awaits inside the facts properly now, while still having my arrange act syntax intact. Arrange act syntax intact. So this test should fail because I'm not assigning it. Right. Sprint is updated. Sprint is created. Expected to receive a call matching, doesn't find it. We now need to go and change this side. So let's change GUID team identifier. That breaks this piece. Request team identifier. See, that's when I'm getting the most use out of AI stuff, is when it's just like, oh, you mean this? But I've found so often that I have to validate that it put the right variable in there, because it does make things up. So it should fail now for the right reason. Oh, when validating a create sprint. So there is a validator attached to the sprint that says it has to have a name and it has to have a start date. And the start date has to be less than the end date. Because I don't allow a nullable grid, I now need to support having an empty grid and using that as default team. Essentially, I need to basically allow you to have a default team where there is no team attached, everything's default, we're good. By doing what I've done there is, by doing that is, I'm sat here like gesturing like I'm actually on the camera, which is funny. By doing that, what I've done is I've said, okay, well, now you can have the concept of a default team. As an organization, if you don't want to go and set up teams, nothing's making you do that now. You can just, you can get by on just using default team. And if I don't support it now down the path, then that would create bug reports. Again, no one's really using the application right this second. No, I check on this. People have signed up. People are not really creating anything meaningful. I'm not going to hurt anything if I wipe out the system and start again. But I should treat it as if it is a real product. I should be respecting it as if somebody has put meaningful data in there. I should be thinking that way now, so that I'm actually making solid well understood, well considered choices that are not hacks into the software. And if I practice that now, well, it doesn't necessarily matter. When it does matter, I have the discipline. And that's what matters to me more. It's the practice of doing the right thing rather than the, oh, look, no one's using the software. It doesn't matter what I do. I can just hack this in. Right? It matters. Let's be clear about what these are. Right. So you are treating it as practice so that in the future when you introduce dependencies, you have practiced it before when it doesn't really matter. Yes. I don't want to I think a lot of what we do should be build discipline and build those processes in from the beginning, rather than it's fine, we'll just rush through, it'll be fine. That's why I'm putting so much time and energy into thinking it through. So yeah. I've been on too many teams where it's just like, oh, just do this quickly. Let's just do this. What are your views on using REST versus gRPC for an enterprise level project? Hi Blender, by the way. Use what is most appropriate to represent the behavior you need. They're both going to function and scale well. I haven't done much with gRPC in terms of introduction. I've used a lot more REST. I suppose it comes down to how do you want to represent it, right? What problem are you solving? They're both built for that sort of stuff. They're both built for scaled out brain process. So in the case of where you don't want to force people to create a team and then decide where a sprint must belong to a team, you will need to have the user create a team and migrate the data to that team. So one of the validations I was going through, and again, when you make a decision, it's not just about, because what forced that was my own requirement, but where are you? What order does it put this in? Define a team. Define a team? Did it go into there? No. Capture, define a team, receive a team, provide Gracio, define UI for teams. Where are you? Include team on sprint entities. So I put in this throwaway statement, right? As a product manager, right? I was like, yeah, you have to have a team. Now, maybe I thought this through as a product manager. Maybe I didn't. Maybe, but that's maybe what we want to design. We've said, okay, you have to have a team. In this case, it is true. I want you to have a team. So I put that on there, not realizing what the cost would be to development. When I came up against that requirement and I look at the table, I'm like, well, I can't. How do I do this? What do I do now? I need to add. So in my real workflow, what I should be doing is going up and previewing these planning items, these stories, and validating what I read there as a requirement and trying to figure out, okay, what does it mean to do this? So the team should be discussing this. There's an impact of doing this, right? Whether I chose the nullable one was introduced technical debt that says you can have a nullable team right now, but now our code has to read as to be able to display these existing sprints, you have to say, okay, well, the team's null or whatever. And it kind of introduces that rule. So it's understanding what is that impact? What is the impact on the future software? What is the impact on our workflows stemming from that? In the case of an empty GUID, I can represent that as default team. It's a clearer representation. It's easy to understand. It's easy to see. Default team has no problem. Basically, if you don't want to use teams in the software, you just have a default team, and that's the impact. And that's what we'd relay to product. That's how we design that, and that's the knock-on impact. So now there's extra pieces required for when you select a team. If there are no teams to select from, default team should appear as an option. I've just introduced that requirement now. Yeah, it's so when I do update, modify UI when creating a sprint, provide a drop down of teams. If there are no teams available, then I should see default team as an option. This is right. That's the requirement I've added. I've understood as a team, as a developer, as a development team, I've understood that knock-on effect. So I really, really, really need to get to the point of making the system update things in more real time. Coming back to you, Blender, by the way. I don't necessarily have any strong views either way. Right now, I use a lot of REST. Well, I use a lot of APIs. I'm not sure I would describe them as RESTful APIs. I think it would come down to purely what sort of things I'm trying to represent. gRPC, it's just a protocol, just a way of doing things differently. But what actions are you trying to take? What sort of stuff are you trying to build? Do you have existing stuff in there that is gRPC? These are the sorts of considerations that go through. Why your API is not RESTful? True REST. My APIs in general are simplistic. I'm using the verbs. I'm patching this. I'm posting that, but I'm not using APIs for navigation, obviously. So I'm not returning resources in those things. I'm not stringently trying to follow a RESTful design. I'm just trying to follow a good, consistent design. REST is not just verbiage. It's more than that. And I've been educated on that in the past. So, but we consider this sort of stuff as RESTful, right? Yeah, there's no resource navigation in my APIs. I don't return a response to this with how to get this resource. I don't do anything like that because you don't use these APIs. So the way this system is designed, yeah, with an actual RESTful API, the intent is to you basically provide the ability to navigate the API within the API. Like if you create a resource, the idea would be you return a a navigation to that resource, or a representational state transfer application. Yeah. Um, so I'm following this style. Yeah, and that's what most people consider it to be. Does this project follow multi-tenant architecture? Yes, it does. Yeah. So data is right now, he says that as he looks at Sprint and realizes Sprint doesn't. Oh, there we go. Tenant identifier. Well, that means is I didn't realize that I'd missed tenant identifier of Sprint until later. The benefit of MS SQL is you cannot reorder the columns. Or the downside is you cannot reorder the columns. The benefit is it tells a story of when you added something. So if a column got added later, you know what order they got added in. In this case, I clearly realized that tenant was missing from Sprint and added it later. Basically, when you log in, you get a tenant ID, and that tenant ID is with your user. And data is filtered by and associated with the tenant. That is the most efficient way. I can handle that right this second. And yeah, so the so most people consider RESTful to be like the proper routing, like the actual URLs you're posting to, but there's more to it than that. Is it fielding? Single DB architecture? No, there's many DBs. So the way this system is designed, these are individual databases. Everything, every database symbol you see here is its own database. The APIs are exposed purely for write. These modules are for storing the data. They're not for querying the data. They're pure write. Yeah, Royfield dissertation. Yeah. There's a lot more subtlety to full REST, so that's why I say I'm kind of RESTful, but not. These APIs are all write APIs. The goal is to get the data stored in the quickest possible way with very little in terms of behavior, business rules, etc. Right now, there's not a lot of business rules in place, but there is going to be, obviously, and those will be distributed between, the larger system versus local validations and setups. So the individual components have their own database. They store their data that they're responsible for. If they have a reference field to something else, it's just an ID. It's not validated. It's not checked. It is trusted that it will be the right thing. Data is produced to Kafka. So I'm using Kafka for state transfer. And in this case, the view component is consuming those events and rehydrating all the data to create the right relationship. So, a planning item can have tasks. A task can have an associated requirement. A planning item can have attachments, etc., etc., etc. So the relationships are really built out in the view component. But yeah, this uses Mongo. This uses SQL Server. This uses Mongo. This uses SQL Server, right? So every different piece of the system. That's why when you asked about my opinion versus gRPC versus REST, it's more what do you need from it? What benefits does each one give to you from your system design? If I wanted to use gRPC for any component of this, I could do. if I want to use, so I use GraphQL to produce this. Ultimately, there'll be more components down here from the query side of things, where the client will just, have connections through the gateway, and the backend components can be whatever they need to be. So multi-DB, tenant is a I suppose you would term that as kind of a what's it called? Partitioning tool. Right this second. If a larger and I have considered this, Blender, by the way, if a larger company was to come along and say, we want X, right? We want our own dedicated databases, right? That's obviously a challenge that would be great to have. What would it mean to support a larger company? Not wholly sure I have that answer at this point. Obviously, isolation of data is a big concern when you're doing this. Like if you get that partitioning wrong, like I clearly missed tenant identifier off of this, which meant that everybody could see all the sprints. That's not good. It's less likely to happen these days, but it does happen. I do forget that the database supports multi-tenancy. Then it might be that there's a copy of the system that the gateway routes to. Using the gateway to offload. Oh, you're this tenant. You go to this side of the system. You go to a different cluster. That cluster is isolated for you. It's possible to just clone the entire thing out and build a completely separate system that the gateway offloads to. That is feasible. That would be a great challenge to have, by the way. To be in a position where an organization says we want our own data. Obviously, there's a massive cost challenge here with having all these as individual databases. Even if they're on one DB server, that is intimidating. Growth is a little bit harder. The benefit is I can switch out the database technology in individual components. But once I go to look at this from a realistic, this is a product, this needs to go live, it's making money perspective, then it's going to be a little bit more thought-provoking. But the benefit of these is these actually can be very small instances for the databases because they're just data. It's the data that's the thing. They don't need a lot of processing resources. There's not a lot of querying going on in these pieces. The biggest database is this one. Were this a monolith, that would be a shared cost, right? So I can have lots of little resources. This doesn't need to be as big. And if I find that this is benefiting from different database technology in the future, I can rebuild another version of the view that will use a cheaper technology or use whatever. So without costing myself the entire system. So yeah. Pros and cons, pros and cons. Started data time. I should be more explicit like that all the time. So, Surly, does it make sense what I was saying about before with REST? Like, why I don't consider it to be true REST? I understand what REST is enough to know that I'm not following It's not pure RESTful. Although I have seen, to be honest, I have seen some APIs recently. I'm not going to mention who. That I was surprised to see actions represented in here. So I don't like the idea of saying, sprint, create sprint. I don't like this concept. I like using the verb plus the actual endpoint to represent the action. It's why I have them as post and patch, right? So you can see at a glance, this is the action that's going to be performed against this entity. That's how I organize it. In things where I have nesting, planning has, I think, is it planning? Which one is it? Tasks, planning. There's not that many major API components. Tenant management, endpoints, user. So where I have a nested relationship where, like this one, users, teams, I'm posting to this endpoint for that user. That's how I represent that. But yeah, I was surprised to see an action represented. Yeah. Yeah, it's the hypermedia part, right? I think Atos. There you go. That's it. So it's giving me the links to the other endpoints. You can navigate the API using the API. Like you can get around the API through it. Hypermedia as the engine of application state. So you go to get accounts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It gives you the links to how you get deposits, withdrawals, transfers. This is very useful if you don't, because then your client doesn't actually need to have context of this. It just knows how to present these links. So the presence of these can determine from the UI perspective what you show, right? It's allowing you to navigate the API through the API. And that I don't do because I'm not using that method. Horn, how are you doing? Okay, so we got the team in there. We've updated the sprint. So now this should fail effectively, or correctly, rather. Not effectively. Effective failure. I like that structure for responses, but I never built for a computer or automatic UX. Which those links help a lot with creating. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I've never used the idea, right? And I know it was just a subtle, it's what most people consider REST is what I do have, is using an API for that behavior. But yeah, that subtle difference of it's more about how you structure it and how it returns responses in a larger theme. But when you're working against a large API surface area, it's nice. We use them at SAP. They helped a lot with getting undocumented data. Yes, I can see that. If I was to present an API around Liquid Sky, that's where that would help, right? If I wanted to provide you the ability to query data out of Liquid Sky as an API, that's definitely where that would be useful. Okay, so sprint is created. We're going to the create sprint handler. We're not doing that. Create team. We don't have team identifier set in here. We're not allowing you to update the team. Yeah, this is the behaviors. So let's go to sprint and let's take period team identifier. You'd think I'd be better at typing identifier at this point, but nope. Okay, you go away and sprint behaviors. You're going to take, just going to take this right down. Application, sprints, create sprint. Whoop. Command.team identifier. Let's run the test. There we go. Just to validate that, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go in here. Right. Radio Patrick, hello. Things are good. How about yourself? Run the unit tests. Don't worry too much about misspelling. I find that once I start writing it correctly, I start a whole new word I can spell for the week. When a sprint is open. Interesting. Oh, these are failing because of the parameter count mismatch. So parameter count mismatch, I kind of went into this yesterday. Because I put the object constructor as private so that I can't just create a new entity of this thing, right? You have to be able to call create so that the right events are fired, etc. Because of that, if I'm using it for unit testing, I need an instance of that object. I can't just create it. So the object builder allows me to create an object by passing it an anonymous version of all its properties, and it will figure out, okay, that's a constructor property versus that's a property on the object, and it will set all its values. Does mean you have to be aware. You have to be aware of the object anyway. You can't just name these whatever you want. They have to align somewhere. Locally, underscore team identifier is there as a variable. Team identifier is passing as a constructor. It will validate that. But it does mean that I have to go through these tests. Make sure. There you go. Okay, so that's adding the team onto the sprint, right? From the application side, from this right side, that's now done. That component is finished. It's a bit too wordy there. Now, the way this is laid out, right? So modify the add sprint API endpoint. We did that. Modify the application code to capture the team identifier. Yep. Include a signed team identifier on the sprint integration event. I'm doing okay. It's way too bright outside right now for 7 a.m. local time. Miserable again here. It's raining. It's been raining for the past 2 days. And it's 55 degrees. Which it's ridiculous. It's May. Come on. We've got a long weekend coming up. So the next part of this is to make sure that information gets published out. So again, because of the way this is being designed, when I associate that team with the sprint here, I now need to produce that data so that the view can get it and ultimately the client can show it, right? So I need to make that a part of this. So Foundation is the library that contains the events. This is a shared library. This allows us to have that same library referenced by Control Tower. And all those events are global to the product or to the platform. So we go in here, messaging events, integration events. Our sprint integration event now needs to have interesting team public GUID team identifier. I'm not calling this assigned team identifier right now. It's team identifier because there is no option, right? It has to have a value. Assigned comes with it an assumption that I can reassign it. So again, trying to think about my wording, trying to think about the understanding of the system, trying to think about all those pieces as I go. So that's that part. Include team identifier on sprint integration event. So these integration events are state transfer. They are, this is what this object looks like right now. I'm not doing, they do carry with them a source of why they change, because multiple actions can trigger this event. This sprint publisher here has event source. So if later on I want to if later on I want to tackle that, then I can do. Need to make sure I'm doing that as well, not that one. Yeah, that's what I just did. Okay. Yeah. So team identifier equals sprint dot team identifier. And again, it's not nullable. It can be zeros right now. If we update the start date or end date, this is going to publish with zeros on it as well. We can't change this. We're saying we cannot change any sprints in flight. They are assigned to default team regardless. When we do the query for which sprints you can see, that is going to say, okay, where it's associated with a team I'm on, or it's default. Yeah, that's, and what should happen is then eventually as people, and again, no one's no one's going to be forced to have a team from day one, but the idea would be that you encourage to create teams. This entire product is not built for solo dev, right? It's built for team-based development, built for workflow. So eventually the default teams would just disappear. It would be supported still, but it would disappear. And at that point, it's a bit of a simpler deprecation because you just stop offering default team or as an option. Right. Patrick, what have you been? I mean, I know you do movie nights on Thursdays and stuff, and you do some coding before that. But have you been working anything specific lately? I haven't managed to catch many streams in the evenings recently, but other than watching Mighty Ducks with you a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so there we go. Include team identifier in publishing sprint. Okay. Push that. Make sure they're pushed off the machine so I don't end up with any challenges later. What this allows me to do now is I can put a pin in this side of things, right? This part is done. Now the integration event will receive it, and now the view side. So if we go back to over here, so modify the add a sprint API endpoint, modify the application code, include the assigned team identifier, update integration. I have to drop off. Appreciate the stream. Enjoy your day. Apex, thank you very much for coming and hanging out today. Appreciate you. Hope you are well. Hope you have a great day. Nice. I'm glad. I'm glad that I can at least keep you productive. Have a great day. I haven't been streaming a whole lot lately, but working on setting up the home lab and servers. Okay. So streams coming in the future. Not that I don't appreciate movie night streams, but dev streams are also fun to watch. I wish YouTube and Twitch chat integration was much smoother. It'd be awesome. Are you saying buy Blender or are you saying buy to Apex? Yeah. Haven't been to Apex's stream before. Apex is I gotta wait. You have to wait 58 minutes. Did you shout Apex out for me earlier on? I missed it. Yes, you did. You shouted out Apex for me. I'm looking like 2 messages up. I'm like, it's the problem with reading the prompter. I don't see the shout outs, and then I'm like, oh dear. Yeah. If you haven't been to Apex's stream before, Apex is a .NET developer working in Godot, building a game in C#, building. Spent a lot of time focusing on the AI and behavior of his game. So he's building up the tooling to build an actual awesome game. Prompter. Yes, I have a prompter. I figured being that stream enough is probably worth, and it is really worth it. From watching chat and being able to talk to a camera is good. I am actually, I'm looking at the time. Yeah, I am going to finish shortly, but yeah, since I have to do all the work for that on a different PC, which I can actually on stream, and I have no idea what exactly I'm doing. Just been trying to sort out the network and process stuff off stream. Gotcha. No worries, one line. Yeah. I should finish up here as well. So we've completed this one, assign sprint to team. The next part is to update the view side of things, building out the this component. So I'm going to continue that as much off stream. I try and do as much as I can, but recently I haven't been. However, tomorrow is a developers.stream stream. So tomorrow we switch project focus. Mondays and Fridays is developers.stream. Last week we got the developer on Monday. We got developers.stream API working, and developers.stream is fully open source as well. So you're more than welcome to check out that project. It is a .NET project using Aspire and Blazor. Yeah, we got the API in there. So now you would be able to register an API key once you've signed in and be able to query the API to look up streamers by their name. So if someone comes into your chat and you want to see, are they a streamer? It will tell you this person's a streamer on this platform, and here's what they stream, and here's their blurb. So yeah, that's that. Yeah. Okay. So, but Blender, you are not wrong. I do have to finish up myself. I've got to go off and do some actual work. I will be back tomorrow with developers.stream. We made some progress on Liquid Sky today. We've got that, starting to move along. Once teams are in there fully and integrated, the planning starts to come together, right? We start to tighten up all those planning processes and concepts, allowing you to filter data properly, allowing you to show and organize. So the next part after the teams is introduced is to create a new screen for actual planning. In the tasking aspect of the application, the development aspect of the application. So moving forward with that. But anyway, don't forget, it is a Thursday, which means that Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, OneLine streams. If you like .NET content, OneLine is a .NET developer. Also works in Blazor and older technologies. Sometimes when working with other platforms, he shows his actual workday right now. And it's an awesome place to go and hang out. And on Fridays has community day. So if you like technology talk, that is a great place to be. However, we're going to go raid Maybe. I raid Maybe a lot, I know, but Maybe is also building an application that he's about to launch. And I think that's worth supporting. It's on topic for what I'm doing. And I don't see other streamers doing that sort of stuff. There's game developers and stuff that are awesome. I know there's a variety of streamers I could go to, but Maybe is building an application, and I respect the effort he's putting in there. And it's an awesome looking application, and it's a great stream to go and hang out in. So we're going to go raid Maybe. I will be back tomorrow with developers.stream. Thank you for joining me. Take care. Have a great rest of your day, and hopefully I get a camera fixed now. See you later all. Bye.